All right, let's dive deep into this incredible stack of sources you've brought us today. We're pulling excerpts from various Upanishads, a foundational body of ancient wisdom traditions from India.
They really are profound texts, grappling with the biggest questions, existence, consciousness, what's actually real.
Absolutely. And our mission for this deep dive, tailored just for you, the listener, is to kind of cut through some of the, let's say, dense language you often find. We want to pull out the absolute core insights, what these specific sources say about the ultimate nature of reality, who we are and all that, and, well, how we might understand it.
That's the plan, sticking strictly to the material provided, digging out those key nuggets of knowledge.
Okay, so let's jump right in. When these sources talk about what is ultimately fundamentally real, what are they pointing towards?
Overwhelmingly, they point to something called Brahman. You see it across different texts, the Rig Veda, Sukla Yajurveda, Samaveda.
Brahman, and how is it described?
Well, it's the ultimate reality, the basis of everything. Think infinite, boundless reality itself, pure consciousness,
Okay.
auspicious, indivisible, faultless, always shining, no beginning.
So it's not just a part of reality, but the totality, the source.
Precisely. There's this line in the Sukla Yajurveda, it's quite mind-bending, that Brahman is infinite, and this universe is infinite. The infinite proceeds from the infinite.
Whoa, okay. That definitely needs some unpacking. If the universe comes from the infinite and is also infinite, what about the world we see every day?
Right.
Because interestingly, these sources also seem to suggest that this world, the one we perceive, isn't quite the ultimate reality.
They certainly do. Often, the world as we normally experience it, distinct objects, it's described as unreal. An appearance, maybe even an illusion.
They use some powerful analogies for that, don't they? I remember reading about mistaking a rope for a serpent.
Exactly that one. You see the serpent, it feels real, but its reality is totally dependent on the rope underneath.
So it's an appearance on something more real.
Yes. Or like a city appearing in the sky. Or bubbles in water, very fleeting. These images suggest the world of names and forms is, well, temporary, a projection of something else.
But then, how does that fit with the Samaveda saying, all this world has Brahman for itself? If the world is an illusion, how can it be Brahman?
That's where the description of Brahman itself is key. It's not just some abstract nothingness.
Right.
The sources often describe Brahman as Satchidanda,
Satchidananda.
which translates roughly to being consciousness bliss. You find this in the Sukla Yajurveda, Krishna Yajurveda, Samaveda.
Being consciousness bliss. So the ultimate reality is full, aware, and inherently joyful.
Yes. And maybe that line, all this world has Brahman for itself, means it's not an illusion separate from Brahman,
Okay.
but rather an appearance of Brahman. Like the serpent is the rope, just misperceived. The underlying reality is always Brahman, even when it looks like the world.
That helps bridge that gap, holding those two ideas together. Okay, if that's the big picture, the nature of everything, let's turn inward. What about us? Who are we, according to these sources? The self.
They go deep into the self, often called Atman or Jiva. It's described as residing within the body, sometimes poetically, in a cave or the heart lotus.
A cave in the heart. And what's the nature of this inner self?
It's described in ways that echo Brahman, pure, luminous bliss, bodiless, imponderable.
During those ultimate qualities.
Exactly. But then in other places, you get these almost paradoxical descriptions, like it's atomic in size.
Atomic.
Yeah, and moving circularly within the heart. So tiny yet boundless.
Atomic and boundless bliss. That's a puzzle. Are these just different ways of pointing at something hard to grasp?
I think that's often the case in these texts. They use paradox to push beyond ordinary thinking. Now, alongside this pure self, there's another crucial element they discuss. The I thought, the ego.
The sense of me, my individual self.
Precisely. One source here, Words of Grace, which seems to draw on this tradition, calls this I thought a mysterious appearance. It arises between the conscious self and the inert body.
A mysterious appearance.
And it calls it the root cause of all these troubles.
Root cause of all these troubles, that's pretty direct. So the feeling of being separate is the core issue.
That's the strong implication. The mind itself is even described as basically being nothing but this I thought.
Wow.
It's the arising of this individual sense that creates the feeling of separation from Brahman and, leads to suffering.
And what about the body, the vehicle we inhabit? The sources seem pretty tough on it sometimes.
They certainly don't sugarcoat it. It gets called the offspring of parental exudations, given an outcast status compared to the pure self.
Oof.
described as fickle like bubbles empty, an abode of impurities, or even endless pains.
Not exactly flattering.
Not at all. Yet, fascinatingly, other parts also call the body a temple.
A temple, after all that.
It's a contradiction, isn't it? But ultimately, it's made of basic stuff: fat, flesh, moisture, and, as one text reminds us, it's only to perish.
A temporary impure temple, destined to decay.
Mm.
And beyond the physical, they talk about other layers covering the self.
Yes, the sheaths, or koshas,
Mm.
like layers of an onion almost, veiling the pure self. Texts mention the mental sheath, the intelligence sheath, the bliss sheath.
Manomaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya.
All right. And there's the idea of a subtle body, too, the linga sharira, another covering limiting the self. These are the layers we identify with, creating that sense of being a limited person.
And these layers connect to our states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep.
Exactly. The sources detail those states. The pure self is said to kind of roam in dreams, experiencing things based on past actions, then return to waking. But they also point beyond these to deeper states: Turiyatita Samadhi, states of absorption or transcendence.
This all seems to circle back to that core idea: the individual self, the Atman, is really one with Brahman. If the ego and these layers cause trouble, is the goal to dissolve them.
That's definitely the message. They emphasize that the jiva, the individual, isn't fundamentally different from Brahman. The Samaveda just puts it out there. Jiva is Shiva alone.
Jiva is Shiva, the individual is the divine.
Yeah. The appearance of lots of separate selves is seen as due to the different bodies and these limiting layers or sheaths.
So fundamentally one, but experiencing separation because of the ego, body, mind layers. Okay, that leads us to, how do we function within this apparent separation? How do our minds, senses, and actions shape things?
Well, the sources definitely stress the role of intelligence and mind. Can't do much without them. The Rigveda says something like, without intelligence, the 2 feet wouldn't know how to go anywhere.
Makes sense. Action and understanding need mind.
And they make a really interesting point about the senses, sight, hearing, and so on.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on what you see or hear, they say focus on the seer, the hearer, the consciousness behind it all. Speech is not what one should seek to know. One should know the speaker.
Shift focus from the object to the subject, the awareness itself.
Exactly. It's about the knower.
There's also that really specific, almost earthy detail. Mind is made up of food. Prana life force is made up of water, and speech is made up of fire.
That's a powerful image, isn't it? Suggests a deep link between basic elements and our inner workings. And they stress the mind is what constructs our worldly life. The world appears colored by it, as one text says.
So the world isn't just out there, our mind paints it. And since the mind is tied to the ego, it needs cleaning up, purifying.
Absolutely. Sankalpa, which is like thought, intention, mental projection, basically our desires and aversions, is pinpointed as the cause of bondage.
Sankalpa are wanting and not wanting.
Right. And giving up desire, or the avoidance of desire, is described as the way to destroy the mind's grip and the ignorance it perpetuates.
So our thoughts, especially the desiring, projecting ones, are the chains.
That's the core teaching. And tied right into that is a choice presented in the Krishna Yajurveda. The choice between the preferable shreyas and the pleasurable prayas.
Preferable versus pleasurable, shreyas and prayas.
Choosing the preferable, what's ultimately good for liberation, leads to well-being. Choosing the pleasurable, the immediately gratifying, means you fall from the goal.
A very clear fork in the road. Choose long-term good over short-term pleasure.
It seems like a direct call to action, really. Align your mind and actions with the path to freedom. Don't get sidetracked by fleeting desires.
Which brings us perfectly to the paths themselves. If the goal is liberation, this pure knowledge of the unity of Brahman and Atman, how do we get there? It seems like there isn't just one prescribed way in these sources.
You're absolutely right. They lay out quite a diverse range of approaches, all aimed at Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman.
Okay, let's look at the knowledge path first, the intellectual approach.
Right. This emphasizes study, understanding, hearing the teachings from a guru, a qualified teacher, then reflecting deeply on them, meditating on them.
Hearing, reflection, meditation.
These are called the causes of full knowledge. And just the act of sincerely inquiring into Brahman is called brahmacharya. There's also mention of understanding complex systems like the 96 tattvas, or categories of reality. Knowing these is said to help towards salvation.
So serious study and contemplation are key. What about a more radical path? Renunciation.
Sannyasa, yes. It's described as a direct route to immortality. It means abandoning worldly concepts, attachments, identifying with the body or mind.
Letting go of everything.
Pretty much, with the ultimate goal of just becoming Brahman. The ideal renunciant, the Paramahamsa, is described as beyond duality's cold heat, happy-sated. They see the body almost like a corpse, something separate and temporary.
Wow, that's intense. A path of total detachment.
Yeah.
And then there are the yogic practices mentioned.
Oh yes, quite extensively. Things like pranayama, breath control, dharana, concentration, and samadhi, deep meditative absorption.
The core yoga techniques.
And even specific physical techniques, mudras, are mentioned, with claims about effects like conquering disease or achieving mental stability, calming the life force, vayu.
And there's talk about energy systems too. Kundalini.
Yes, stirring the kundalini energy, often visualized coiled at the base of the spine, the Muladhara chakra.
Right.
The idea is to guide this energy up through other centers. Svadhisthana, Manipuraka, Anahata, Visuddhi, Ajna,
The chakras.
up to the highest center, sometimes called Sukha Mandala or associated with Sahasrara, leading to liberation. And hearing inner sounds, nada, is part of this too.
A very internal, energetic path. What about more devotional or ritualistic ways? Are they included?
Definitely. The sources mention things like saluting or making offerings to various deities, Vayu, Rudras, Agni, sometimes for specific results like reaching certain worlds or for purification. There's also mention of wearing holy ash to remove sins and stop rebirth, or Rudraksha beads for gaining divine grace.
And specific mantras seem important.
Hugely important. The Gayatri mantra comes up a lot, called the essence of strength, linked to body parts, used in initiation. Repeating it is said to bring fruits, even immortality.
Wow.
And meditating on Om, the pranava, is presented as a really fun mental practice across different texts.
Okay, so we have knowledge, renunciation, internal yoga practices, and devotion or ritual. It really seems like a toolkit, different approaches for different people.
That's how it appears from this collection, yes.
Yeah.
Though, interestingly, they also mention Siddhi's special powers.
Ah, psychic powers.
Maybe. But the texts are quick to add that these are desired by those who don't have self-knowledge. For the knower of the self, they aren't important. The focus stays firmly on liberation.
Good clarification. Liberation, not superpowers. And the importance of teachers passing this down is mentioned too. Lineages.
Yes, like Uddalaka teaching Yajnavalkya. It reinforces that idea of needing guidance from someone who knows the path.
So all these paths aiming for the same goal, what is that ultimate state? Liberation, moksha, how is it described?
It's defined pretty powerfully as the destruction of the ego that I thought finally dissolves.
The root of all troubles. Go on.
Right. The mind gets absorbed in bliss. You transcend waking, dream, deep sleep. You become partless, motionless. One source calls it Kaivalya Jyotis, the light of absolute oneness.
The dissolution of the separate self into pure light. And this can happen while still alive. The Jivan Mukta.
Yes, that incredible concept, liberated while living. These people are described as having dissolved all their mental patterns, their desires and fears.
Unaffected by emotions.
Completely. Joy, anger, fear, lust, helplessness.
Yeah.
These don't touch them. They're free from external worries, living inwardly absorbed, almost like being in dreamless sleep while awake, one text says.
Wow.
And crucially, they see the entire world as their self, no separation.
That's an amazing state to even contemplate, freedom within life. But what if someone doesn't reach that state before they die?
Well, the sources suggest that based on their karma, their actions, and how much knowledge they gained, they might cycle back into wombs, human or animal, maybe even plants.
Yeah.
Or, depending on their practices or final thoughts, they might ascend to other realms, the moon world, realms of gods like Indra or Vishnu or Brahma.
So continuing journeys based on where you ended up, but the ultimate aim, the highest state, is that total oneness with Brahman.
Absolutely. That's described as being immortal, fearless, beyond sorrow, pure consciousness, the full orb of light, realizing I am this, identifying with that ultimate reality that's freedom from suffering.
I am this. Such a simple, direct statement.
And the Krishna Yajurveda sums it up so powerfully. When there is no I, there is no karma.
No ego, no karma. It all ties back to dissolving that sense of separate self.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, that was quite the journey. From the infinite nature of reality, Brahman, down into the self, the Atman, versus the ego and the body. Then looking at how mind and desire shape things, exploring all those different paths, knowledge, renunciation, yoga, devotion.
Yeah, quite a spectrum.
And finally arriving at liberation, moksha, the Jivan Mukta, and that ultimate oneness.
We've definitely pulled out some incredibly rich threads from these ancient texts, just sticking to the sources provided. It really does give you a concentrated dose of these profound ideas.
It really distills it. And, they leave you with some thoughts that just sit with you. Like that line suggesting the self you realize isn't just in the universe, it's the maker of the universe.
The self is the creator.
Yeah.
That completely flips the script, doesn't it?
It really does. Or this one. Everything is Brahman alone, and in that reality, the body, karma, they don't even exist.
Everything is Brahman, dissolving the whole structure we perceive. Deep stuff.
Or maybe the most famous distillation of it all, from the Samaveda, just 3 words, that thou art.
Tat tivam asi.
That thou art. Definitely something profound to mull over.